Hello, today we'll be covering 360 deals, otherwise known as multiple rights deals. Some call it artist income agreements, while others just call it slavery with extra steps. I'm Ishmael, and this is Walter J. Pink & Associates, and we're just here to help you out. So by the end of this video, you should be able to answer for yourself if 360 deals are good, if they're bad, and should you get into one. But long answer short, they're good in a bad way, they're bad in the best way, and you should get into one if you have the right amount of leverage and the right team of attorneys during negotiations. Now, regardless of how you feel about 360 deals, they are one of the fastest ways to get fame, fortune, and platinum records, but at a very steep price. Also, at the end of this video, we're going to an economic example and breakdown of how a lot of artists get trapped in these such deals. So go ahead and like, follow, subscribe, and talk to me. Leave a comment. Now, before we go in depth into 360 deals, we have to understand the history of 360, because 360 deals is a relatively new economic model for the music industry. Now, there have been versions in the past, such as Motown in the 60s. They had their own version of pseudo 360 deals. However, the precursor and the model that a lot of 360 deals are based off of was between EMI and Robbie Williams in 2002. And the reason why it took so long for 360 deals to come into fruition is the world's bottom line, money. Now, prior to the early 2000s, physical sales were king. Record labels were making money hand over fist. They were making so much money, they told the artists you can do whatever you want. If you want to shoot a movie, go ahead, shoot a movie. If you want to get endorsements, get endorsements. Do what you want to do as long as you stay on the album schedule and you tour when we ask you to tour. And artists did just that. And they kept all the money they made outside of records. And it was a golden age. Everyone was making some type of money because of the business model at the time. Because if you wanted to listen to a song, you had to buy an album. Or you can buy the single at an extorted rate. You can also wait to hear it on the radio, but who wants to do that? Or go to a live performance, which is expensive and taxed. So there was no other way to listen to your song on demand other than buying a physical album. And due to the pressure on the consumer to buy albums, the record labels and everybody in the music industry was living happy. Then everything changed with the emergence of technology, namely Napster. Now, Napster was a peer-to-peer platform focused on music. A peer-to-peer sharing means that individuals can send each other music files for free. And shortly after the creation of Napster, other sites and other platforms and softwares like it came up. You have FrostWire and LimeWire, to name a few. And even to this day, you can illegally download music for free, and it's much easier and safer. Because with any peer-to-peer platform, you have the potential of viruses being sent and masked as music. Whereas nowadays, you can download music straight from YouTube and SoundCloud if you know how. And that these illegal downloads and the ease of it is adding to the strain and problems felt by the record labels and the music industry as a whole. Now, another killer to the golden age was the ability to burn CDs. Now, when I was a kid, everybody was selling mixtapes. At movie theaters, at school, at barbershops. No matter where you went, you could find somebody selling a mixtape. And the mixtape was self-explanatory. It was a mix of songs from different albums, normally acquired illegally. And I remember the first and only mixtape I bought. It was called My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy on the Moon. And yes, individuals actually sometimes name their mixtape. The mixtape was a mix of Man on the Moon 2 by Kid Cudi and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West. I never should have bought a mixtape when I was a kid at the time, but everybody was buying mixtape. In middle school and high school, I do not remember anyone having an actual album. And these mixtapes greatly hindered record sales. They were illegally acquired music, burned to CDs, selling it to other individuals. And I'm sure the person selling the mixtape does not give any money back to the artist nor the record label. Now, illegally acquired music is still a problem to this day. But another problem lies with the legally streamed music model. Streaming is by no means comparable to old-fashioned sales of records. When you sold a record, an artist received about 50 cents to $1.50 per record sold. And to make even more money, labels would often repackage the same album as a deluxe edition or simply resell the album with a different artwork. Also, if an artist has multiple albums, you can expect that the label will make a greatest hits compilation and sell that as an album as well, when the repackaging gets stale. Now, with streaming, on the other hand, you oftentimes have one release of the album, and not every song in the album gets an equal amount of plays. Whereas an actual album, doesn't matter if you only like one song, you bought the album, so the record label and the artist get paid the same. Whereas with streaming, you can pick and choose what songs on the album you want to stream and or listen. The popular songs would have to offset the lack of streams of the unpopular songs on the same album. Furthermore, you have to ask how much of the song actually needs to be listened to in order for it to be a royalty stream. The time is usually 30 seconds, but it can vary based on the streaming platform. Now, let's say you're an artist and you want to make $1 million off of sales. If we go into the old school model, all you have to do was go platinum. Sell 1 million albums and you probably get $1 per album. Whereas for streaming, you need to have 287,356,322 streams, 30 seconds or more on Spotify to equate to $1 million. Now, you may be thinking with streaming being worldwide and there's over 6 billion people on this planet, it'll be easy to get 283 million streams. But let's look at Drake's number. Drake is the #1 streaming artist with a catalog of over 150 songs. And Six God himself is barely breaking $2 million. So new artists with a small catalog have relatively no chance of making any substantial money from streaming services alone. Lastly, with technology, just the sheer amount of artists and music available has increased insurmountably and has oversaturated the market. Whereas prior to the 2000s, if you weren't tied to a record label or had a major distribution deal, you were unlikely to be heard. For example, my father and uncle had an artist called The Warden, and he was legitimate. He was doing numbers, shows, tours, interviews, everything. He even had a song in the movie National Security called Silly Pendejo. However, the company they signed a distribution deal with was not a good company, and none of their fans could get that. And the hype behind The Warden just fizzled out. As without distribution, many artists like The Warden could not be heard. And the artists that were featured and had proper distribution benefited from a more concentrated market. Now, with all of these calamities happening at once, along with the general reduction of sales, record execs started getting nervous. They were concerned at why they couldn't afford their fifth or sixth yacht. And thus they introduced the 360 deal. Now, 360 deal grants the label the rights to revenue from digital sales, tours, merchandising, endorsement, films, publishing. And even if you start a business while under contract, the record label could own a portion of that business. Now, a common misconception is that the percentages of the 360 deals are just insurmountable and they're unfair. It is an assumption that the record label is taking a lion's share of the outside revenue. But if you aggregate all the outside income, then it equals about 20 to 30%. So if it's the minority portion of the revenue, then where is this idea coming from that is like slavery with extra steps? The way the label traps majority of artists are through expenses and recoupable, which is a fancy way of saying that money that we spend on you, we're in first position to get paid back. So let's understand from a record label standpoint. Imagine you start a record label, you're doing pretty well for yourself, you saved up a lot of money, and now you want to start signing artists. But you have to know that 95% of the artists you sign will lose you money. Another 4% will barely break even, and the 1% of the artists you sign will make up the majority of the revenue for your label. Now, usually for record labels, they get 85% of the record sales and artists get about 15%. But with the streaming numbers being what they are and physical sales dropping, how are you not only going to get the money you spend on the 1% of the artists, but also adjust for the losses that you incurred on the other artists? Now, again, that 1% of your artists are doing extremely well. They have movie deals, they have endorsement, they have merchandising, they have everything, and they're making money. And your thing as a record label, you're the one that took the risk on the artist. You're the one that housed the artist. You're the one that spent promo money on the artist. So would it be fair to say that you helped in putting the artist in the position they're in now? Which is true to an extent. Marketing dollars are real dollars because marketing an artist is their primary concern, and majority of the time is the bulk of the cost. Now, some artists think I just signed this 360 deal, let them pump me up with manufactured fame and just ride my fame off into the sunset. And on paper, that sounds logical. That sounds nice. But just like many good ideas are only good as ideas. They aren't good in reality. Now, I'm sure you can think of many artists in the past, but now have fallen off the map and you don't know where they are, what they're doing. And even if they have a show, you're probably not going to go. So now that you have all the background information on a 360 deal, let's walk through an economic example and break down actually how artists become trapped in these deals. This is the economic breakdown and portion of the video, and we'll try to keep it as simple as possible. So you as an artist, I finally noticed in a label called Suncrest Atom Multinational, SCAM for short, wants to sign you. They draft a 360 deal worth $2 million, you're beyond excited. You've made it in your mind, so you immediately sign the deal without contacting any lawyers, so you sign all the standard rights and all the standard terms. Now I want you to be aware that everything spent on you have to pay back. A $2 million deal just means that they have set aside $2 million for your first cycle. Most deals are multi-album, multi-year deals, and a cycle just means your first campaign for your first project. So the first thing you get from signing is an advance. And don't misunderstand, an advance is just a fancy way of saying a loan. Now the idea of an advance is to give the artist money so that all they need to focus on is their craft and their art. The advance should go to essentials and not be spent extravagantly. So they give you $250,000 and here's where the game starts being played because now you owe them that amount. But as long as you don't spend all of it, you can give it back. But many artists blow through their money without any persuasion. And if you are a frugal artist and try to save your advance, the record label will pressure you into spending the money for your image. They will try and get you to spend the money on items you do not need, and the more expensive the item, the more your image value goes up, theoretically. So you buy a new car, you bought some expensive clothes and jewelry, and because you have all these expensive trinkets, you have to move to an expensive and safer area of town. So you spend $60,000 on the car, $60,000 on clothes and accessories, and $130,000 for an uptown condo. Sounds reasonable. And now it's time to record the album. So the record label books studio time for you, and they want the highest quality product. So throw out the idea you can cut costs by going to cheaper studios. You will be forced to spend upwards of $250 to $300 an hour for studio time. And this is where you start feeling restricted even more because now the record label is forcing you to spend your own money. Because remember, anything spent on you will need to be paid back by you. Now, the shortest I've ever seen a studio booked for by a major label is a week and a half. And the longest I've heard of thus far has been 3 months. So depending on the studio time, you're out another $30,000 to $100,000 just for studio time. But let's meet somewhere in the middle at $65,000. So they spend $65,000 on your studio time. Now Scam, your record label, wants you to create a 12-track album and have 3 singles for promo. So the next step is you have to purchase a beat for each song. We're going to keep this example simple and assume you write your own music, so we do not have to include songwriters in the budget nor their percentages of royalties. Beats are extremely expensive and can run up to $200,000 for named individuals with well-known beat tags or beat styles. People like Timbaland, Switz Beats, Mike Will, etc. Now Scam knows just a name or beat style will practically force your listeners to give the song a listen. And so they are willing to spend top dollar on beats. You also have to have good beats for all your other songs, so a decent beat will run you between $10,000 to $25,000 a beat. So for beats, Scam is spending $500,000. Now for your singles. Just like with the beats, Scam wants your listeners to like the song even before they hear it. And if listeners see a featured artist that they like, it's almost guaranteed that they'll like your song. One of my artists wanted a verse from Lil Baby 2 years ago, and he told us $80,000 for a verse. So use that number even though it was 2 years ago and the price has probably gone up. So you have 2 well-known artists on 3 of your singles and 1 mid-tier artist on the 3rd song. So that's going to cost you another $185,000. So after the album is created, you owe Scam $1 million, half of the value of the deal you signed already. Now it is time to push and promote your album. Labels generally have their own internal marketing team, but if they need to outsource anything, they will hire a marketing team. And remember, everything spent on you will need to be paid back by you, and that includes hiring contractors or salaried individuals for your sake. But we'll continue to keep this example simple and say Scam has an internal marketing team. So the first marketing push is Scam shoots 3 music videos for your songs, and a solid music video will run you around $50,000 to $150,000 per video, and you do 3 videos for your 3 singles. It costs you a total of $325,000 for all 3 videos. And now that you have your videos, they hire social media influencers doing TikTok dances and such to create a dance and post your song. Social media posts range from $30,000 to $100,000 per sponsored post. So that's another $250,000. Now for further exposure, Scam pays to put you on top of Spotify playlists. And the top spot ranges from $100,000 to $250,000. Remember, you have 3 singles, so that's $475,000 for top spots on streaming services. So with your music catching traction, Scam wants you to promo in person. So they spend money buying interviews, YouTube ads, sponsored airtime, and even a little payola on the side. And they spend another $225,000 on this ad campaign. Finally, for the last bit of push, they want you to go on tour to promote the album. And this is where it gets even more expensive. Due to your entourage popularity from all the prior promos and safety concerns, you're more than likely flying private. And each flight ranges from $3,000 to $10,000 per flying hour. Then you have to get a top dollar room in a luxury hotel to keep the image, top dollar tour bus, hire security, buy insurance for the shows, pay for makeup, pay for backup dancers, house them too, and there's many other expenses. And remember, every expense is also paid by you. So at the end of the year, the promo and marketing push costs you $1.5 million. Notice Scam went over budget. Now labels do not care if they go over budget if they believe they can get money back from you, one way or another. So at the end of the year, you owe Scam $2.5 million, but you're feeling good. The promo worked, you have positive feedback from all your fans, and you think it's nothing. You believe you made more than $2.5 million, and you're right, you're booming. The Spanish artist Scam paid for is taking you multi-platinum in South America, and you're doing really well in all other regions. And you generate $7.5 million in revenue. Now these numbers are very generous, but for this example, I want to show you how even an artist that performs exceptionally well can still get trapped. So $5 million comes from the streams and album sales, and $2 million comes from other ventures such as merchandise and endorsements. $7 million sounds like it's more than enough money to make everybody happy. But wait, remember, you signed this deal without lawyers, and these expenses are not taken out of the gross revenue. They're taken out of your portion of the revenue. So the record sales and streams are a 15-85 split, in which Scam gets $4.25 million and you get $750,000. And this is where you can really feel the effects of a 360 deal, because for other ventures, you made $2 million. And in the past, this would be all the artist's money. You would be able to pay back the record label and pocket $225,000, which is not bad for a year's worth of work in which you live the lifestyle of a rock star. But because of the 360 model, you will end up being in debt for $350,000. Because remember, all the expenses and the recoupables come out of your portion of the money. So believe it or not, you're in debt after you generated $7 million in revenue. Now that you're in debt to the record label will pressure you to hurry and make another album to pay off your debt, and the cycle starts all over again.
That just sounds like slavery with extra steps.
In these type of deals, artists are told to make music in studios the record label chooses, with artists the record label chooses, using beats the record label chooses, under a marketing model the record label chooses. And if a signed artist refuses, then they'll just sue them for breach of contract or sue them for debt that is owed. Now there are ways around this if you get the right team of lawyers and sign the right deal, and we will get into that in a later video. But what I tell every artist is, and before you get to any deal, make sure you have a solid EBK and a solid body of work so you have enough leverage when it comes time to make the deal. So I hope you learned a lot in this video, and until next time, be great and stay safe.